prosecutor versus the convicted felon, and that really changes the dynamic of this matchup between the two of them that Joe Biden did not have.
Okay, thanks a lot, Taylor. Let's go to the White House. That's where Cassie Semien is standing by. And Cassie, Vice President Harris has gone from the wings of this election to center stage. The president tonight reaffirming that Kamala Harris is the right person to take on Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in November.
Yeah, and this is something we've heard from the president since he decided to step aside on Sunday with that social media post shortly after endorsing Harris to be his successor at the top of the Democratic ticket. We heard it on Monday when he called in to his Wilmington headquarters when she was addressing those there and saying that she is the right person to take the reins at this moment and that he hopes his supporters will rally around her and support her as the nominee. But for those who aren't familiar with Kamala Harris, though she is our vice president, we took a look at her political career so far.
Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
Kamala Harris shattered another glass ceiling in 2021 when she was sworn in as vice president, becoming the first woman, African American, and Asian American to hold the office.
So help me God.
Was one more first in a political career that has broken barrier after barrier. Kamala Davy Harris was born in Oakland, California. Her parents were university professors. Her mother was born in India, and her father was Jamaican American. She lived in Indiana and Montreal before attending Howard University and the University of California Hastings School of Law. Harris began her legal career as a prosecutor in Alameda County. In 2003, she ran her first campaign and won, becoming San Francisco's district attorney. She parlayed her work there to win election as California's attorney general in 2010 and again in 2014. The first woman, African American, and South Asian American to hold the position. Harris often speaks about her time as a local prosecutor and state attorney general in drawing contrasts with former President Donald Trump.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
In 2017, Harris became the first black woman elected to represent California in the U.S. Senate and just the second black woman to serve in the chamber. As a member of the Judiciary Committee, Harris became known for her tough questioning of then-President Trump's nominees to the Supreme Court.
Yes or no?
Well, is there a person you're talking about?
I'm asking you a very direct question, yes or no?
After less than a full term, Harris launched a campaign for president, but dropped out of the 2020 race before any votes were cast. After securing the nomination, Joe Biden chose her to be his running mate. Soon after they took office, Biden asked her to address the root cause of migration. Her office points to billions of dollars of aid to El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala to improve conditions there. But Republicans say she bears responsibility for the surge of migrants at the southern border. As vice president, Harris has been the face of the Biden administration's fight to protect reproductive rights after the Supreme Court ended the right to an abortion.
They have turned back the clock to the 1800s to take away a woman's most fundamental right.
She also has been out front in addressing college debt forgiveness.
We forgave student loan debt for more than 5 million Americans.
And Errol, just to give you a sense of what is happening here at the White House, I don't know if you could hear those cheers over my shoulder. It seems like they're coming from the South Lawn. Before the speech, we saw hundreds of staff members coming over from the executive office building across the street, going towards the residence of the White House. It sounds like they're on the lawn and the president is out there speaking to them right now. We heard, hello, hello, my name's Joe. And, you know, his kind of familiar tagline as he walks into a political rally. That's the kind of sense of jubilation here at the White House. These people love Joe Biden. This was a hard decision. You could hear it in his voice in that speech, what a difficult decision this was for him to make, but how proud his staff is of that decision and how proud they are to support Vice President Harris as she embarks as the leader of the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, very interesting. Important to keep in mind, there are hundreds of people who thought they might be there for another 4 years. It turns out it might be more like 6 months. Cassie, let's talk about these fundraising figures that the Harris campaign has been touting this week with the media. Walk us through where things stand and how her fundraising compares to Biden's efforts following the debate.
Yeah, so we got a memo from the Harris campaign this morning saying that since Sunday, the campaign has raised $126 million. To give you some comparison there, President Biden brought in $127 million in June, while Trump brought in just shy of $112 million. Some really eye-popping numbers for a 2-day period. They're also really hyping up the amount of volunteers that they've been able to recruit in such a short time period. We're hearing that over 100,000 people have signed up to volunteer since Sunday for Harris's campaign, and that over 2,000 have actually applied to work full time for the campaign. So those are some numbers that they're really pushing out, that they're really proud of. Whether or not that momentum can continue forward, we'll have to wait and see. But some really strong numbers out of the gate for Harris and the Harris campaign just in its first week.
All right. Thanks a lot, Cassie. Alex Cohen joins us now from El Segundo, California. And Alex, Kamala has a record as a prosecutor in your state. How do you think she's going to leverage that history? I guess we got a little taste of it just a minute ago as she goes against Donald Trump.
Yes, and in fact, Donald Trump's team just actually sent out an email a short while ago trying to ding the presumptive nominee now for a program that she did to try to reduce crime called Back on Track. And one of the folks who was released from prison went on to murder someone, and they are pointing to that as an example of how Kamala Harris has failed. Meanwhile, she has pointed repeatedly to that program as a very cost-effective way that brought down the numbers of recurring crimes by a dramatic extent. I also want to flag, Errol, there is a note that just got posted moments ago by the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden. It's a handwritten note, as you can see there, to those who never wavered, to those who refused to doubt, to those who always believed. My heart is filled with gratitude. Thank you for the trust you put in Joe. Now it's time to put that trust in Kamala. Love, Jill. Very interesting to note and kind of contrast that a bit with the president who said the choice is now yours, whereas Dr. Biden is saying, no, actually, this is what you need to do. This is an interesting moment where on the one hand, we are saying goodbye in many ways to this one president as folks are also swiftly moving and galvanizing behind another.
Very interesting. And when to the extent that Kamala Harris has run in the past, when she wins statewide, give us a sense of really just how big and diverse California is. I mean, it's bigger than a lot of countries.
It absolutely is, and everybody thinks of us as this big blue state, but the actual reality of political opinions and beliefs here is way more diverse than that. And one of her most notable races, when she ran to be the state's attorney general, she ran against a very well-established, moderate Republican, a guy by the name of Steve Cooley. And although Kamala, and many thought there was no way that she would be able to defeat him, in San Francisco, she ran against a very popular, very strong candidate. And time again, when folks initially said, oh, there is absolutely no way that this person, especially this woman, let's be very frank about it, will be able to defeat these contenders. Time and time again, she's done it. People might remember more recently her unsuccessful presidential bid in 2019. That is true. She did not have the same sort of momentum there. There were a number of missteps. But if you look back historically here in California, there is no doubt about it. I just heard a story about a political strategist who said in the race for attorney general, this is not her last stop. She is going for vice president. And that political consultant was roundly laughed off at the time. And look at where we are right now. It's really nothing short of extraordinary.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alex. Now let's head back to the swing state of North Carolina and talk more about President Biden. Tim, there in Raleigh, you've had the chance to interview the president on several occasions. What did you make of his remarks tonight? And how does his, I guess, energy level compare to the Joe Biden that you met and interviewed in 2019 and 2020?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I've not seen him in person, in some time. So I'm observing this based on what, most of America observing too, through videos and through speeches like we just saw there. I mean, there is a clear difference between then and now. I remember the last time I interviewed him, he was, make sure you talked about my bow tie a bunch. It was something with him that it caught his attention. He wanted to talk about a lot. But even through the conversation, he would stop me and grab my arm and, to forcefully try to reinforce a point. And just a lot of energy when he took the stage, and even the physical movements have changed. I mean, it's nothing that most of America has not seen the difference in. What's been remarkable about what we heard tonight was it felt like, he was still having some resistance. I've been talking to some older leaders in North Carolina, retired leaders, about what they think about all this with the age change. 77-year-old former state Supreme Court justice, a former governor who's 74. And they've talked about how, when you're slipping a little bit, but there's this resistance to sort of acknowledging it because you feel like there's still a lot that can get done. And I still think we heard a little bit of that in the president's address tonight, talking about how he still believes he had the record to win and could do this, but it was sort of a passing of the torch to a new generation. And I talked to two state Democratic leaders tonight in North Carolina, legislative leaders, and it really came across that way to them. Since Harris, the vice president, has sort of taken the torch here from the Democratic Party, they say they've seen a surge in fundraising already, excitement across the state as they've already been traveling. And in an odd sense, there's almost this sort of relief from that they believe that they can win again in North Carolina. And for state lawmakers, where they're facing supermajorities of Republicans, they feel like they may be able to break those supermajorities again. So it's just remarkable. Think about where we were a week ago tonight talking about what a week Donald Trump had. And now we're here, sitting at Kamala Harris is pretty much a presumptive nominee, and the momentum may be in her favor.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, yep. Thanks very much, Tim. I mean, that's certainly true. The momentum has shifted abruptly to the Democrats and to Kamala Harris, all based on the president deciding, enough is enough.
Yeah, it's a sprint. I can't take credit for this, but some people were concerned about this being like a sugar high that Kamala Harris has right now. The thing is that a sugar high lasts for a little bit, and we don't have much time before this election. We're now like in France or the UK territory. I don't want to say that it's bad or good. It's just the way it is right now. As for what Tim was saying, look, I mean, this is something we've talked about for a while. Joe Biden looks a lot different. He looks different than he did even when he started. He's in his 80s, and the presidency has a way of aging people. Whenever he speaks, particularly at kind of a heavy moment like this, I always look at the pictures behind him, and I'm always struck by the picture of his son, Beau. I mean, he thought that Beau Biden was going to be the next generation. And when he passed away, I think Biden felt that and with the threat that he thought Trump posed, he thought that he had to run. What the advantage among many for Democrats of Biden stepping down now is Donald Trump is now the oldest person to run for president. And they're going to continue to mention that in ways subtle and not so subtle. Now, Trump can counter, and I think accurately, that he's seen as more vigorous than Biden. He certainly showed a lot of his resilience after that assassination attempt. But nonetheless, I think they're going to say that not only is he old, but his ideas are old, and that he's going to take us back to a pre-modern time.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Thanks for that, Josh. Let's go back to Taylor Popolars. Let's do a fact check here. Trump and some other Republicans have been criticizing the vice president for her role on the border. Can you clear that up? It's not entirely clear from some of the rhetoric what she was supposed to be doing and how much line responsibility she had or should be assumed to have had with what's going on at the border.
Yeah, so this is a bit in the weeds, but essentially Trump said it here at his rally tonight that he called Kamala Harris the border czar, that Biden designated her to be the border czar, to oversee the U.S.-Mexico border. That is not true. She never had the title of czar. She does not have that title right now. What Biden did do is designate her to fill a role that he was actually overseeing when he was Barack Obama's vice president, and that is basically do the diplomatic work to connect the Biden administration with leadership from some of the countries south of us that kind of are big focuses in terms of migration. Think Honduras or Guatemala. So Vice President Harris, in that role, traveled to some of those countries, met with the leaders of those countries, talked about ways that they can get humanitarian aid there, talked about ways that those countries can maybe keep more migrants within their borders before they go further north to Mexico and then further north to here in the United States. And it's a role that she has overseen, but because of that, Republicans in Congress especially, and Republicans like Donald Trump on the trail, have said, well, clearly in that role she was in charge of the whole border, and she's to blame for the record surges of undocumented